each of you to the second meeting of the Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Before we go into our formal processes, there have been questions raised in the public, and I want the public and this committee to be clear about a few things. One, I consider us in our initial phase in organizing and developing our pathway. And so I would suspect that the first quarter of our existence, now through the end of December, will be spent on organizing strategies, on plans, on how we're going to implement the tasks that lay before us. We will also be clear about what our mission statement is, and I want to say this so that we are all on the same page. We have no authority or ability to expand what is in the resolution. Our jobs have been defined by the county commissioners. We exist as a body because of the county commissioners. I'm sure there are members of the public and persons at large who think we ought to do this or ought to do that. Simply know that until we're instructed differently by the county commissioners, we will live within the borders and the parameters, the corners of the resolution. That said, there's also the question of how will the public be informed. We plan to issue quarterly reports starting in January. We'll follow subsequently with April and July and so forth as a means of keeping the public informed. Our minutes will be available and part of the public record. And starting today, I think you'll be able to go to our local broadcasting station and view the interactions of the committee. I thank you again for being timely and present this day. And it has been determined that we have a quorum. And so I will officially call this meeting to order. You have the agenda not only before you, but it has been sent out prior. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda or to amend it as you see fit.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'd second.
Properly moved and second. Any need for discussion? Any unreadiness on the matter?
I do have a discussion item, potentially an amendment to it. If we can potentially add an issue to discuss meetings going forward, as far as time of the meetings. I've got a lot of feedback online about 2 o'clock not working for people who are working, kids are in school, and
We'll entertain that under new business. Item 6 will be including future meeting dates and times. Any other discussion, questions, or comments? Call for the question? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Before you also are the minutes of our first meeting, October 9th gathering. What is your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. The minutes stand approved. Our first order of business, election of a vice chair. The floor is open for self-nominees or anyone who would like to nominate someone.
I'd like to make a nomination, please.
Yes.
I'd like to bring forth Leslie Irvin, nominated to the committee as vice chair. I feel like with her experience in the community as both a parent, a community member, and then as an educator, she's a valuable asset to this team and would make a great vice chair to this committee.
Okay. Floor is open for any other nominations. For the third time, the floor is open for any other nominations for the position of vice chair. I'll entertain a motion to close the nominations on the said name. Leslie Urban.
Reverend Jones, since it is my nomination, can I just double check and make sure that's all right with Ms. Irvin, since no one else has brought forth a name?
It would be an honor and a privilege, and it is the reason why I applied to be on this committee. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Floor is still open for a motion.
I motion that we elect Leslie Irvin as vice chair of the committee.
All right, nominations are, then I would take it closed on the said name. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that the nominations be closed on the said name of Leslie Irving to serve as the vice chair.
Thank you, guys.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you, David.
Our next order of business. Oh, my Lord. Is the proposed vision statement. This is a draft that has been developed that seems to be quite inclusive of the resolution. Feedback, review, discussion.
If I may, this is way too long for a mission statement, and if you look at any format for a mission statement, it's way too long. I think we can alter it maybe, but frankly, the first sentence kind of condenses it down in a nutshell of what our mission is. That's what I bracketed off when I gave feedback on this internally.
I completely agree. It's way too long. I mean, it's got a lot of very important pieces and parts and components, but I do feel like that is way too long.
I think most of us who have worked in organizational development would agree with you. And that the first statement, first sentence.
Yeah, from the Calvert County all
Yeah.
the way to public schools.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I think is a good starting point. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
What about having a vision as opposed to creating just a mission statement? You can have the mission and then perhaps use some of the wording that's in this mission statement as a vision.
That's exactly what I was gonna suggest.
Student
Yep.
safety and
Yeah.
I think that a vision statement would be appropriate. The large picture in which we strive to get to at the end of the rainbow. And let us deal with this issue, and we will come back to that. Any further discussion? Is there anyone who has an objection to the proposed amendment?
I have an additional recommendation
Sure.
to make it even shorter.
Yes.
We can start with enhancing and change that word to enhance.
Mm-hmm.
The mission is to enhance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so if the mission is to enhance, then as it reads,
Yeah, as an apostrophe
Yeah.
S on the end of committee,
yeah.
Wellbeing Advisory Committee's mission is to
Mm-hmm.
enhance.
Yeah, yeah, as opposed to dedicated to, correct. For grammatical flow. Do you have the ability to strike this as we're going through it?
To project it on the screen?
Yes,
I'm checking on that.
okay, but if you can't, that's fine. Right
Okay.
now, we understand we're dealing with an apostrophe S on committee. And
There's not a way,
okay, that's fine.
yeah, to share that
But
right now.
let's think through this again, Dr. Brandon.
The Calvert County Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee's mission is to enhance the safety, security, and overall well-being.
Mission is, that's what the word is missing.
Security
It's
and
not there.
overall well-being of students,
Okay.
faculty,
Yes.
staff.
Yeah, okay.
and
Oh, it is the mission of the Calvert County. All right, so we have to, put that in its proper, position so that we have the ability to then eliminate dedicated and move enhancing to enhance, okay?
While we're in the middle of some trimming, and I'm certainly open to anybody objecting to this, but is there a problem with simply saying of students and staff instead of separating out and faculty and support staff? If we just said students and staff?
I would look for somebody within the schools system to, I mean, we have different.
No, absolutely.
we have
Kadisha
different-
is
we have different,
support staff, so I turned to her before I checked, so just in case.
I would just say
but-
overall staff, I mean, it's gonna cover us all, we all know that we're included in that term,
Yeah,
rather
we
than
don't really
separating
delineate.
it between the support staff and the faculty.
Exactly, and we want everybody safe, so at the end of the day,
Thanks, Kadisha.
that's fine,
Yeah,
Students
at
and
least
staff.
with me.
yeah.
Strike five.
Yeah. Well-being of students and staff within Calvert County's public schools.
All right. Any further amendments, recommendations, suggestions? Emily, are you in a position to give us our new statement?
I'll definitely try. Oh, Linda's got it. Okay, let's give it a shot.
Yes.
The mission of the Calvert Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee is to enhance the safety, security, and overall well-being of students and staff within CCPS.
Okay. Anybody need a second reading? Anybody with any other concerns? That being said, a motion to approve is in order.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Properly moved in second. Any need for further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Now, as it pertains to a vision statement, we can do one of two things. We can bring you back a vision statement, or we can entertain one now. But if you'll beg the chair's prerogative at this point, I'd like to ask you to submit suggestions to staff for a vision statement. And we'll try to do committee work in committee and otherwise move forward. As a matter of fact, that was recommended by, yes,
Sinitra.
Sinitra?
Yes.
Good. Sinitra,
Yes, sir.
would you and Dr. Temple and Guy serve as a committee of three and bring us back a recommendation for a vision statement?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing that at our next meeting. Okay. Our review, our next item on the agenda. So our review, yes, they're gonna really improve my sight before I leave here. Well, send me to as a means of facilitating conversation, and I want you to understand the attempts to do so in organizing us have been based upon our reading of the resolution, staff and myself, and trying to come up with what we see to be phases in our work and in our development. And so we have outlined some matters that have come before you, and in some cases, we've gotten some feedback. And so the phases are, as we see from a standpoint of organizational development, how we can move through this process. Beyond that, we placed some objectives and some things we'd like to look at in terms of strategies and other approaches. Those are open for discussion, editing, and all else. But I'd like to have some feedback on these phases, and if you see them as appropriate for the way that we manage our work.
Do we have
have
a timeline overall of how long this?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because that was has been my concern even prior to this. But we decided that because we were dealing with the collective, that we would like for the committee to at least make it through its first quarter of organizing and then thinking about what timelines we're gonna put on this. Because just as is meetings, I tell you, when you go over 90 minutes, for me, it's a visit, it's not a meeting. But in the same process, if your committee working on something, there has to be a sense of urgency. And if we have a sense of urgency, then we need timelines and we need to hold ourselves accountable to those. But in this initial phase, I'd like for us to just be sure what we want to get accomplished. Okay, so the first phase is formation, purpose, and brainstorming. And then the second phase we have is focused on identifying issues and, I would say, data or sources for data. And I would ask particularly those of you who are going to be coming before us, I spent many years in the alphabet soup. And I realize that not everybody knows every acronym. So if you have something that you want to share with us, please let us know what it is so that we understand where the source is. Phase 3, issue and data assessment. 4, defining measurable short and long-term goals. 5, developing recommendations and delivering the final report. Are we missing any steps that we need to be concerned with? These are pretty standard. What we will say is that we'd like for you to look again at the bullet points under each. And if you think we need to add something, please let us know. We're gonna bring this back to you in December for the final stamp. Okay. Emily's gonna lead us through the next stage, which is the oh, you got the charts? Okay. We can deal with the charts, but we also have general feedback on each of these areas. And if we could use the chart that we have before us as a means. Now, we sent to each of you a copy of the feedback, and I want to thank those who provided feedback. And I want to encourage every committee member to understand that we can't do everything in a meeting. And so your feedback is valuable and will make its way to the full committee. And so please take advantage of the opportunities. I know that Guy and Brandon, I believe, gave us some feedback. And so, Emily, you gonna walk us through some of this?
Absolutely, I can. So you'll see, for members of the public, you'll see on the screen the staff recommended proposals for viewing. So the identified challenges are based on committee feedback from our first meeting of challenges that have been seen throughout the community and from each committee member's perspective throughout the school system. So from there, staff have developed potential outcomes for the committee to work through to try to organize our thoughts and as well as the trajectory of the committee. So based on the challenges, this is item number 1. We create a category called Safe and Supportive Environment, which has an emphasis on inclusivity, social and emotional learning, and mental health support. And for each of these 5 ideal outcomes, the ultimate goal is to have the committee throughout its work develop strategies to potentially tackle and recommend that to the Board of County Commissioners and the school system. And so we can, I think the committee, if the chair is comfortable with going through it this way, we can go one outcome at a time, and we can talk through the comments that have been submitted, as well as just have a dialogue if the chair finds that a fitting way to tackle this.
I think it is.
Okay,
Would you proceed?
absolutely.
Real quick, before we go into each individual one, can I provide the comment that I gave on, because mine was more of an overall comment.
Absolutely.
General
Oh, yes,
comment.
your general
Yep.
comment, yes.
And the general feedback on it was, and this is just, it's pretty small, but I just recommended that of all the different issue areas, we take off the numbering system. It signifies like priority order, and that's not something we've talked about. You know, the things that brought us here, you know, for instance, you know, empowering positive student behaviors or training staff could be our top priorities. The way it was ranked, it reads as if it's
Yeah,
in rank.
and let me be clear, it was never intended to be ranked. It was intended to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got these 5, 6 issues that we want to bring before you. Certainly removing the ranking or removing the numbers is not going to change our work. But be clear that it was never intended to prioritize one area over another.
Is there any further discussion on that? Okay. So returning back to number 1, safe and supportive environment. We have inclusivity, fostering a respectful and welcoming culture where all students feel a sense of belonging, social and emotional learning, programs that promote emotional well-being, resilience and healthy relationships, and mental health support, on-site counselors and mental health resources to support students' emotional needs. These are based on the identifying challenges discussed during the last committee meeting, which you can read up on the screen or on your packets if you're on the committee. The needed data is based on conversations during our last meeting. There were several committee members that threw out potential data points that could be evaluated. So if there's any discussion, I know there's some comments in your packets that the committee has. If anyone who submitted those comments would like to talk through those, more than welcome to, and we can get the dialogue started on number 1, or not number 1 anymore.
Jennifer, I know you had mentioned last time asking about Panorama. I did reach out to the supervisor, Suzanne McGowan. We met as a result of that. I am now going to be part of the district's training and facilitation of the Panorama data and what we're going to do with it. It is a screener. She said that was first and foremost. It was, it's to be viewed as a diagnostic screener. Grades 3 through 5, I believe, took it. The window closed last week. She was able to share a little bit of the data with me. Basically what it does is it, and in my world, we look for targeted small group instruction based on data. This is the very first time in my almost 30 years of teaching where I feel we actually have something that we can look to target those small groups based specifically on very descriptive characteristics of students and areas that they struggle with. So I'm very excited to, I think the training's on the 25th, so I'm really excited to become a part of that. I can share out more when, after that training is finished. But I'm seeing it as a way for teachers to literally have access to lessons based on the actual outcomes of how the students answered the screener questions.
All right, so
and be able to group it
okay,
like that.
I appreciate that, but my related to the order of business before us, then should we then note that as a source for data in the future, Panorama?
I think we have it. It's there. I know Dr. Townsell said something about not using any data from CCPS last time. I'm not really so much in agreement with that.
Okay, so we should put it there as a potential source
Yes,
for further discussion.
yes, for sure.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I submitted a document that was several pages long. And I guess there were a number of charts. I used AI to look at a variety of different data points. And so at some point in the future, if there's a subcommittee that's looking at data points, they may find some of these charts useful.
Okay, thank you.
And I did get clarity that we do handle the care data, which is the ACEs. It's our
Yeah.
system for evaluating, of course, law enforcement helps us with that. And involved in submitting that data to the state. So we have that, we'll just expand where it says ACES data in Calvert to include that handle with care data.
Okay. Any other comments, or those of you who submitted comments in these areas? I believe, Guy, you had some comments here?
Yeah, and, you know, I won't, I won't get too carried away going through all of them.
Right.
You know, I liked a lot of what I saw in the initial ideal outcome. I like the emphasis on safety beyond kind of physical safety. People often think about safety and they think first about kind of hardening things, not about how people feel, and I think that's really important. Added a couple points in that first one about you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Spent a week recently up in Ohio at an ARC of the US meeting, and we were talking a lot about this topic, which I think is important. It's kind of seeing that issue grow a bit. As we got into the challenges, I have, you know, just would love to know more about kind of where we are in terms of training that is being done. You know, where is Calvert County in terms of bringing in trauma-informed training? I am a proponent of training that goes deeper than just kind of an initial PD, but how do we actually influence a change in culture? How do we make sure we're trauma-informed, not just to students, but to teachers and staff and families as well? So I'd love to know more about that. We also talked about some of the positions that are open. I'd love to see some data. You know, where are we in terms of counselors, psychologists, social workers? You know, I think that's important as well. And, you know, I also mentioned under the identified challenges of the school to prison pipeline, there was an article recently talking about Calvert County having one of the highest arrest rates in the state, and that was concerning to me. So I think looking at those issues is important as well.
Yeah, we saw a news flash last May indicating the same with regard to the arrest rates.
Yeah, and one other, I guess, one other point in safe and supportive. As I was reviewing this, I was kind of looking at some data sources that I know exist, and I took a quick gander at the Office of Civil Rights data, and I was shocked that I found actually 16 open civil rights investigations right now in Calvert County Public Schools, which is very high. If you look at Anne Arundel County, there's about 5 that opened in the last year. Charles had 3, I think St. Mary's had 2. So, you know, digging into that, why are we getting so many civil rights complaints at this point? Those are all within 12 months. So I think that's an important data point as well.
I think it's important to add on to some context. When the community hears 168 arrests, the image that's conjured up is a kid being walked out of school in handcuffs, put in the back of a police cruiser, and taken to the station for processing. Of the 168 arrests in the last report that were available, only 3 were detained. 165 were just referrals. So they weren't taken to jail, and 68%, so over 2/3 of those resulted in 0 missed time from school from the last report that the state provided. Not saying it's not something to look at, but I do think that language matters, and arrests bring up a certain connotation to it.
All right,
The
so
data doesn't support.
Are you suggesting a change in language?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually data from MSDE, so
Right.
the MSDE report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
So,
And this is something, and Chair Jones, and we've spoken about this, we definitely should revisit this document if it's still in agreement with the chair, to revisit this document and do a formal adoption during our December meeting.
yes.
So any particular language revisions that committee members wish to submit between now and our December meeting, we can adopt the formal language today, but today's a good opportunity for dialogue to kind of possibly work towards some consensus to what that language may look like.
Exactly, and also we want to suggest to you that if you see language where it needs to be broken out, very similar to what Dr. Temple just did in terms of delineating that, the information, then make that recommendation as well. We simply are trying to outline how we're going to proceed and what data points we want to pull and what are the key issues and key strategies we need to employ to get our work done. Okay?
Any other further discussion on safe and supportive environment for today?
If we're gonna be talking about data points, are we talking about
Sure.
data points? So, on the mental health support, I think it's widely known that we don't have enough support in the school system organically, from what I gather from talking to folks. And I think just generally in the nation, we don't have enough mental health support, right? So we identified it as a problem. What I'd like to see is, the expectation to hire maybe X amount of mental health professionals in the school might not be realistic. What I'd like to see is what our relationships with the community organizations, like the Department of Health, the behavioral health, any other private practices, and what are those relationships? Are they informal? Or do we have any memorandums of understanding between these organizations to provide support when we need to flex in a school that that needs some help?
So basically, what you're talking about is community needs assessment around mental health access and services.
That's right. And I wanted to include private practice as well. Who's out there willing to offer pro bono work, that type of thing. Like, what are the relationships? Are they codified beyond just like a list of resources in a page?
Identifying them and whether or not they're collaborations or existing memorandums of understanding regarding how the bodies work together.
And I do want to add that when we're thinking about needed data and key performance indicators, that section of our guiding framework, I think any testimony from particular groups that the committee is looking to see could be an interesting point to add to this section as well. So any groups that the committee members are thinking about adding could be a good point to add in this section.
On the mental health side, I've already been just talking with the local behavioral health authority, and they're more than willing to come out and talk to us about, to the committee about these things and what resources they have, and then we could probably learn more about what their relationship is with CCPS, if it exists at all, beyond just resources on a page.
Ms. Bowdry, I know you had your hand up.
I also wanted to, when we talk about inclusivity and we're talking about fostering a respectful and welcoming environment, I also like for the team to consider disabilities, especially disabilities. And I know that we can't identify kids with IEPs, but there should be some data points where we can look into those kids who have IEPs, a possibility of looking at how many referrals in the elementary school level versus the high school level, because that's where it starts. We talk about recidivism. We talk about play-based learning versus compliance-based learning. So if it's compliance-based, that means that when you get into that elementary school, the recidivism rate goes up because you're going to get a lot of those behaviors coming from kiddos who may not be able to regulate themselves. And so because it's compliance-based, then they get referrals versus just having our entire school system become more aware of what behaviors look like. How do we include those people who look different from us? They're neurodiverse. And instead of making them comply, how do we create some other form of communication for them with the teachers as well as into the community and with their parents? Does that make sense?
So are you suggesting that the language be altered to deal with social, developmental, and emotional learning?
I do.
Okay, so note that, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quickly that while the data set is not as current as I'd like to see, the Office of Civil Rights data collection does break down by 504 and IEP, so we have Calvert County data accessible through that.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Any further discussion on this one?
Can I have one more data point? And,
Absolutely.
Brandon, I don't want to discount your outside, but I know we have in here to look inside. I would love to see the numbers on openings within CCPS as well. I can speak just to related service providers because they fall within my bargaining unit. I can tell you that we have at least 5 open school counselor positions right now. So I can't give you the full data, but I know CCPS could provide that for us. So I would love to see school psychs, social workers, counselors, what those current openings look like in CCPS and what we could do to support those needs as well.
The school climate study that is done annually to staff.
Yes.
Healthcare-wise.
Yes.
And does it report to like burnout and some of those kind of trends that we can see with staff? Like are there-
You could probably delineate
there's
that type of information.
Good data.
Yeah.
Maybe in a different section, but I know there's a thread of that throughout this.
Yeah, and I think that some of those come under support
Yeah.
as opposed to safe and supportive environments. So, and there may be overlap, but in the midst of that, let's move to that so that we can try to get through our ideal outcome.
And I will note, just for the committee to know, we are on a slight time limit today because we have a presentation from the Maryland Center for School Safety. We need to wrap up the meeting by 4 p.m. So I do want to make a note of that as well for the committee in interest of time. So suggested or ideal outcome number 2 is support for CCPS staff and contractors. It has the 2 bullet points. 1, support for personnel. Ensure that staff members have the opportunity to maintain and enhance their skills through ongoing certification renewals and training programs. Ensure that staff is supported and well-equipped in supporting various safety and well-being scenarios for students. Bullet point number 2, support for contractors. Ensure that CCPS contractors, particularly bus drivers, receive comprehensive support in maintaining transportation safety, as well as effectively managing student behavior on a bus. And these, again, identified challenges are based on conversations from our last meeting, and we are lacking a bit of that data conversation, so that could be good to maybe discuss a bit back and forth today. And I want to remind members of the committee and the public that the strategies to address problem for each of these ideal outcomes are blank, because this is something that the committee will recommend in their final report and work on throughout its work. So, any discussion for this ideal outcome?
Seems to be pretty straightforward. We got 2 comments back in, one really about the posture, whether or not it was a strategy or an outcome. The other, also, we want to look at data. So, any other feedback on this?
I will say, Chair Jones, there was 2 recommendations submitted for two different bullet points to add. The first one is staff well-being and mental health is prioritized by leadership as demonstrated by staff response to a wellness survey. The second bullet point, second amendment submitted, ample funding allocated for professional development of staff.
I don't know if this goes under the support for CCPS staff and contractors, but my colleague mentioned about data points when it comes to private practices, when it comes to grant funding. Is there a possibility that we can look more into data points about what grants could be funded in these areas where we may not be able to get contractors, but we can possibly use grants to bring in people for a certain amount of time, whether it's 1 year or 2 years? And the grant could be huge enough that we can look into maybe hiring someone who's, or looking into finding someone who's more experienced in some of these areas that we need, but through a grant bringing them in.
The question then becomes, in our response in terms of resource development, that's probably where that needs to go.
Okay.
Because I think that in all of this, everyone wants a rich and supportive environment. But we would be irresponsible not to understand that everything that we're speaking about is money. And so along the ways, I think we're going to have a committee that works on resource development, that focuses on where we can identify sources or recommendations as we go forward.
As a data point, beyond the 2, these are the handbooks for the teachers for secondary and elementary for discipline. What other training and strategies are given to staff? We'll just say staff, right? And are they given opportunities to practice those things? Like you can give a module of training or provide this to somebody, but if you're not doing any type of repetitive, for those of us served in the military, you know what I'm talking about, or even law enforcement, like you got a rapid muscle movement on how you respond to situations. And I'd like to hear more about that from CCPS of what the teachers are given as far as scenario training and to deal with some of these things. That's a lot of the complaints where they don't want to approach students because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they they call them out on something. That's cited from that 8 April Board of Education meeting where folks from Calvert High testified.
I can tell you that at the beginning of every school year, I'll quickly try to run down things that we do in the county. There are safe schools classes that we take online. They're required from all staff, for all staff to take within a certain time frame. A couple of them are based specifically on, I mean, there's a number of them. There's probably at least 10 of them. A couple of them are specifically based on things that deal with trauma. The pupil service department comes in at the beginning of every year, also provides additional training on suicide prevention, things to watch for. So we get splatters of training throughout the school year. We're also offered the opportunity for CPI training, not more the de-escalation piece, but it's not for all teachers. It's just if you want to sign up for it. And then usually crisis teams are created within each school based on that. So there's a specific group of people that respond whenever there are, major concerns that happen in the schools. I would tell you that we do not get enough opportunity to practice once we are given those trainings. Most of us have had restorative justice training, how to deal with students and help them process through things, but there really is not time given to apply any of those situations. or
Okay,
practice.
can I just, for the sake of order and decorum, we are outlining a plan. We're not in the fact-finding session. So we can identify sources and opportunities that we'd like to hear from. But I think we need to leave fact-finding at the time that we're going to deal with fact-finding and move forward with laying out the plan. Because it's important that we stay task-oriented or we'll never get to fact-finding. So, that said, any other points or comments on number 2?
I was just going to add real quickly to piggyback, Leslie, off of what you said. I added 2 things under identified challenges, and one of them was related to that crisis training you talked about. My understanding is that, my belief is that not everybody should be trained in physical skills. That's not something that we need.
Yeah,
But I believe the more people we can train in de-escalation skills, that's really beneficial. I also think it's really important that we focus on some of the upstream strategies, and Calvert County's doing some of that. I mean, now, Calvert County, I know, has done some work with, Ross Green, Collaborative Proactive Solutions.
Yes.
They're bringing in some other programs as well, but those upstream programs are really important because that's how we not only manage a crisis, but prevent getting there in the first place, so.
Okay.
So I apologize, go ahead.
With the needed data, we would have the wellness or the climate results from those surveys, the needed data.
Okay.
So when the committee takes a look at this document between now and December, these highlighted points are suggested amendments from those who have reviewed the document. So consider those and add your own amendments as well. We can create this working document to review and hopefully adopt in December. So shall we move on to the third?
Yes,
Chair
please.
Jones? The third ideal outcome is empowering positive student behavior with 3 different sub-goals. Number 1, clear and engaging behavior expectations. Define acceptable behaviors and student responsibilities in contributing to a positive school community. Make students aware of their rights and expectations in an engaging manner. Use straightforward, age-appropriate language so all students can easily understand and remember the code of conduct. Number 2, restorative discipline and support. Emphasize conflict resolution, peer mediation, and restorative justice approaches rather than punitive measures. And item number 3, behavior support plans. Offer individualized and proactive support for students who may struggle with conduct, aiming to address underlying issues rather than solely punishing behaviors. And for the committee's note, there are a few suggested amendments to this that you can see in your packets. If those who brought forth those amendments wish to make comments, they may do so.
I can make comment on the one that the 2, and they're particular on bullets 2 and 3 up there. So on restorative discipline and support, the law and ComAir and restorative discipline approaches in general recognize the need to take a more comprehensive approach and not just relying on the mediation and all those other aspects, which are also important. So what I put on there is before we go ahead and sign on to an approach that we want to take as a committee, we should probably discuss it. And taking into the factors of the law and ComAir, what I changed bullet 2 was integrated discipline and support framework. Integrate best practices for student discipline and support within a framework that provides pathways for positive student behavioral outcomes and enhanced academic achievement and school safety. I think it meets the intent and the vision of the law and ComAir to have a more comprehensive support framework for discipline.
And then your comment under the behavior support is basically an editing aspect there, without sacrificing established behavior and conduct.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Guy, did you want to comment on any of yours?
I think a couple things. I mean, one, I made the point about restorative approaches and bringing in trauma-informed restorative approaches, because not all restorative approaches are in fact trauma-informed. Some of them actually can be harmful. I think the big point that I would make again and again is that a code of conduct doesn't change a child's behavior. And if a child's having a hard time, we really need to go upstream and figure out why they're having a hard time, why they can't meet the expectation. So I think it's always important that we're driven by, curiosity and thinking upstream, because we can make a beautiful code of conduct that will result in very little change.
Can I just make a point that, under that comment, it should be corrected to say does not, because that's what Guy was trying to convey.
Any other comments or feedback under this area? You see the indicators, arrest data, and the civil rights data that was mentioned earlier has been suggested.
Any other comments on this ideal outcome?
The only last comment I have, injury and violence data. I have some concern when we use the word violence frequently. Not to say that there's never, in fact, acts of violence, but often what we're really talking about is a kid who's dysregulated, a kid who's having a hard time. Violence assumes intent to harm, and often what we're really talking about, yes, large behaviors, but they're not always intended to do harm. And when we talk about violence data, just being clear that we're often talking about kids who are really struggling, having a hard time, not kids that are intentionally trying to do harm.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, then can we move to number 4?
The fourth ideal outcome is modern facilities and resources. Bullet number 1, well-designed spaces, flexible, comfortable, and well-lit spaces that support different learning styles. Second, safe facilities, improve systems and measures to ensure that schools and buses are protected from external and possibly internal threats. Third point, public health, ensure that school facilities are maintained in a manner that eliminates public health hazards, including mold and other potential risks. There were no suggested amendments to this section from committee members prior to today.
We did have it highlighted under the data points. And we are aware that from the days that they open, we have some elementary schools that have been subject to design flaws that resulted in them leaking. So mold is an issue. We're also aware of the fact that as we take this forward, we can't pretend we live in isolation. We have, is it 8 schools? 9. 9 schools that are on the list of those that need to be replaced. So I think as we make recommendations going forward, they may have an impact on some of the capital planning that takes place. And certainly, we realize that we have this window, if you will, to have some input before the design phases start for this. So we need to take advantage of that. If you know of any better practices or ideal places, when we get to data points, it would be a good time to bring those things in.
If
just-
I could just add one quick point, kind of on the design, I had a comment here, but I think is relevant, which is, looking at universal design, looking at accessibility. I mean, that shouldn't be an afterthought, but sometimes ends up as an afterthought. I also had a comment here, but it may seem strange to people, but about taking cues from the hospitality industry. I work with a colleague who was working in acute psychiatric settings where they were able to reduce and eliminate a lot of restrictive practices, things like restraint and seclusion. And they did a lot of fantastic work around changing the environment. Sometimes our schools, when we begin to focus very heavily on security, begin to emulate prisons rather than emulate places where people feel creative and inspired. So I think there's some other research out there when it comes to thinking about designing places. Even having light coming into places could be really helpful. So I think there's a lot of things we can do there.
I think there's a lot we can do there. There's just a reality of some things. I was in the first grade class at Mount Harmony Elementary, 1961. I think the world has changed a little bit since then, but that building was designed for 1961. And so, as we move forward, I think there are opportunities for us to make recommendations in this area that may impact not only well-being, but in creating a positive learning environment for all students.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd also like to bring to your attention that the document that I submitted included several, technology advancements that are available that we would want to consider with redesigning of facilities.
Thank you, Dr. Newsom.
Chair, just a point of clarification. The state has a rating system for schools, and there are 9 schools at a rating that would qualify them for a replacement or renovation.
Isn't Beach Elementary pretty new? Isn't it being dedicated, right?
Yes.
The newest, right?
December 8th.
Yes.
It might be helpful to have their faculty or their principal come out and talk about have they settled in. I don't know how long they've been in that building personally, but if they've identified strengths, weaknesses with their newest building that we have,
Comparison.
and then they can talk about those and provide feedback. So next time one of those schools on the list makes the cut, they can take those into consideration.
As a matter of fact, I'm a member I teach speech therapist at Beach Elementary School. And if you go to the dedication, which is this weekend, I'd like for you to see the zone room. That's a room that I personally had a lot of work in creating for my neurodiverse students. Those are students who are coming in and saying, I can't handle crisscross applesauce at the carpet. So we created stations where when they need some self-regulation, we basically have them to go in there and go into various stations, put in alphabets and do various things. It's still learning, it's play-based learning versus compliance-based. So that's a room that I created, and I also invite you to come to my classroom as well, where it's interactive learning, where there's things on the board, where they're not just doing focused learning. But I think that's very important, and accessibility is critical, because when they're outside on the playground, you'll see those who can't speak or are trying to speak. They have signs everywhere where they can point to where they want to go, and they can talk to, if they're hurt, they can point to that. So those things are really critical in this day and age.
Any other discussion on modern facilities and resources for the time being?
Let us move to the final point.
The 5th ideal outcome is family and community engagement. We have 3 different bullet points here today. The first one is parental involvement, communications and activities that keep parents engaged in the school community. The second is community partnerships, collaboration with local organizations for mentoring, internships, student support, and real-world learning. And the final is clear and constant communication. Ensure key stakeholders in schools and the general community are aware of major changes within CCPS as well as their role in supporting CCPS. There were no suggested amendments to the document, although there were some comments left on this section as well.
I'll share a couple of comments that I had. One of them involves, kind of coming back to the idea of being trauma-informed. One of the things that I think can be challenging is it's tough. It's tough in a lot of our schools right now. It's a challenging job, but sometimes you begin to hear kind of people pointing at parents. Well, if only the parents did this, or the parents aren't doing that. One of the things that I would encourage is that when we're thinking about being trauma-informed, we're taking those principles not only to how we interact with kids in our school, but how we interact with each other as staff, but also with families and parents. Often the kids that are coming in with a lot of trauma are coming from families that have generational trauma and have not heard good things about their kids in the past. So I think it's really important that we have some of these principles that go deeper than just the classroom, but kind of into the community. The only other thing I pondered here is that some of these things seem really, really big and broad, and I just wondered if these things really fit under the scope of what we were doing, but I think we're kind of probably figuring that out as we go here.
I think we are. The other aspect of that is that as we look at this, I'm really more interested in whether or not we have created the type of structures and systems that support quality family life. Because if we don't have that conversation, then the assumption that schools can fix everything will continue to move along. It's really about a much broader prospect, and I think that a key element to student wellness starts long before it comes to a school building or a school bus. And so I think that we have to figure out just how deep we can go, how far we can go. But it's really about what those systems look like that support family life. And I want to submit to you that just as Mount Harmony is a little different since I was a first grader, that family life and supporting family life in Calvert County is completely different. And we need to understand that when you're in a higher income, high cost environment such as this, it no longer becomes an option how many people work in the house or the amount of time or where the jobs are. You got to realize that our school system is serving a population that 70% of the parents work somewhere else. While that has been changed a lot by the pandemic's ability to teach us about technology and the ability to work in multiple places, it still is an impact that we have to recognize that impacts the life of our children. So we want to look at community and family engagement to a point that we can see what the impact is on our schools and not pass everything to the schools. Everything doesn't belong to the schools.
Mr. Chair, along those lines, there was a book written by a businessman named Jamie Ballmer. He wrote it about 20 years ago entitled Schools Cannot Do It Alone.
Mm-hmm.
He researched public education from several hundred years ago and documented what's been added to the place of educators every decade for the last 100 years. And every decade there have been a number of initiatives added to public schools, but over 100 years nothing has been taken off the plate. And he has, there's a list that's called Ballmer's List.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to provide a copy of Ballmer's List to go into the record. I've shared with a lot of elected officials, congressmen and senators who all agree that these things need to be done, but they need to be funded. And the community needs to take on some of that responsibility that's been placed on schools, as you have so eloquently stated.
Mr. Chair, I would recommend aiming to wrap up this section in the next couple of minutes for the interest of time.
I just have one more.
Dr. Temple, did you have something?
I just had one more. If we can get more information on trauma-informed, I'm just not, I can read up on it, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know if everybody else is as well. I'd just like to learn more.
Yeah,
As a data point?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm actually part the way through a trauma-informed book now because of the same situation and learning about things called ACEs, adverse child experiences, and other things that govern how our world is turning these days.
Well, they change your brain. You know, these experiences change
Exactly,
your brain.
exactly.
Rewire
Change.
when you, yeah.
And the author that I'm reading says that once you get to 3, he lists 10, but once you get to 3, that you got issues that you need some help with. So, any other comments about number 5? And again, not in any particular order. The fact that we had them, the next time you see the document, there won't be any numbers beside them. But we will work as we are guided by the data and our opportunities to assess. For the last time, any other comments? All right, when you see this document again, we will have incorporated the changes and any other changes that you have. We will bring it back in December. Let me just say to you, as I complimented those who took the time before to review them and give their feedback, I invite all of you to do the same because when we come back together, we need to be in a position to move on the document. If you have ideas, thoughts, suggestions on data points, suggestions on resources, contact persons, include it because we will be moving this agenda along. Okay? Thank you. Now, back to our agenda. We have a presentation today from the Maryland Center for School Safety. And he has informed us that he'd like to be referred to as Dino. So Dino, you're on.
That's my middle name. Is this one working? Yes. Okay. I'm a walker and talker, sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. Joseph Pignataro from the Maryland Center for School Safety. If you see me on the street or you call me, just ask for Dino, D-I-N-O, like the Flintstones. That's my middle name. First off, disclosures, there are none. I work for the state. I don't deal with any vendors or anything like that, and I don't promote any products. The objectives today are to give you an understanding and the purpose of the functions for the Maryland Center for School Safety and an overview of the Safe to Learn Act of 2018, which we commonly referred to as STLA, and the legislative requirements from it. Who we are. Originally, we were established by executive order in 2013. At that time, there was actually only 2014, there was one person in our center, the first executive director. Then I came on in 2015, and at that time, you see, it was 2 guys in a truck and a half crisscrossing the state. He had the Tahoe, I had the little Ford Escape. Safe to Learn Act expanded our responsibilities in 2018 after an incident here in Maryland and one in Florida. The legislators were in session, and they decided more needed to be done. What that meant was we went from 2 personnel to 15 personnel in our office. We were going to operate in a regional representative format. Basically, we have our main office staff who do the grants and the behind-the-scenes work, and then we have a regional representative for every 4 jurisdictions. So there's one for every 4 counties, and I have a regional you'll see shortly who handles Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Hartford, and Cecil. I picked the right one. There we go. Provide a coordinated and comprehensive strategy for school safety in Maryland. Our mission is to promote enhanced safer schools. Our vision is to safe schools within the state, and our values are treating everybody and working with integrity, kindness, service, respect, and professionalism. We collaborate with local school systems, public safety, state and local government, community organizations, parents, and other groups who's interested in maintaining a safe and secure learning environment. We provide resources including promising practices and programs, technical assistance and training, and grant funding. That's what everybody's ears pick up. We also help maintain and maximize relationships. If you ever see me on the road or in a meeting, there's usually a cup of coffee in front of me. I won't give you the Double D brand, but that's who I drink all the time because that's the only one I can keep down. This is our regions we have set up. The western region, you see in the dark green, encompasses Garrett, Allegheny, Washington, and Frederick counties. Our central region is Carroll, Frederick, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel. North region is Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Hartford County, and Cecil County. On the upper shore, we have Kent, Queen Anne's, Talbot, and Caroline. And the lower shore is Dorchester, Wycomico, Worcester, and Somerset County. I was the original representative of Upper Shore. Our representative down here for Prince George's, Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary's went on to another local education agency to work. So the person we hired lives in Berlin. I wasn't going to make him drive all the way over here. One thing I've learned, it's never far in a state car. So I brought myself down to this region. I've worked with everybody, all 24 jurisdictions, so it's not anything new to myself. Our operations division. We have an office at Bowie State University in the Proctor building. That's their education building. That became operational as of July of 19 when we started providing our training. We offer, by law, their school resource officer and school security employees have to be trained by us in a class before they can work in a school. We do understand that people are hired mid-year. Those individuals that are hired mid-year have to, before the beginning of the next school year, have to attend our class, or they cannot work in the school in that capacity. We provide behavioral threat assessment training. By law, everybody in the state, local education agencies, I refer to that, have to follow the state's guidelines or have a guideline along those guidelines, their policies. In 2025, we're going to be offering a school administrator safety academy, which is 24 hours of professional development. We're tweaking that up now and finishing that up, and that should be coming out early 2025 for school leadership. Our prevention and intervention section provides promising practices in promoting positive school environments related to prevention and intervention strategies. Provide assistance with evaluation and development of programs focused on violence prevention, youth suicide prevention, substance abuse, and incarceration. We provide training and assistance to identify promising practices in the training section for school emergency preparedness, planning, and critical incident response management. We also provide technical knowledge and assistance on evidence-based programs to help reduce school violence, gang involvement, and other unsafe acts within a school environment. Emergency plans and tabletop exercises. We have to receive by law every emergency operations plan for every public school in Maryland. There are over 1,400 public schools in Maryland. We have reviewed all the current plans that were initially given to us, and we're now in the process of reviewing updated plans that were given to us. What we do, there are key indicators in there between the guidelines for 2019 from MSDE for emergency planning have all the indicators that we have to follow and make sure that are in these plans. And we provide guidance and comment to the LEAs that don't hit all of them and tell them what they recommend they need to have in there. We provide a yearly tabletop exercise 2 times a year. We just completed those. The next one will be early next year, I think in March. But we run it from our office, and all 24 school systems are allowed to participate. What that basically they do is we run the scenario, they bring their persons in their executive team and their emergency management side of things, handling everything, into their, wherever they do it, their operations center or whatever, and they run the program through there. They run the process of how they're going to handle it from their end there. We give them all their scenarios. We also have published 40 mini TTXs for administrators. These are 40 different scenarios that are on our website. And a school administrator with their leadership team in their school can pull one out, go over, take their emergency operations plans and their policies, run a quick one with their staff afterwards. And just the goal of this is to keep their oil going in the gears and keep them confident in how they're running their stuff. We also operate Safe Schools Maryland. It's a tip line, an anonymous reporting system. This launched October 3rd, 2018. It's, again, an anonymous reporting system to report threats of safety and or well-being of students. Students, parents, faculty, staff, and members of the community throughout Maryland can use the I call ARS for short. It's app and web-based. These reports, unlike a crime solver's tip line, this does not go directly to the police. These tips go to designated individuals in each school system, and if it's deemed in the protocols a life safety tip, then the local law enforcement agency is also notified through the 911 center, so that that end of it, a life safety issue, may be handled. But that's the difference between our anonymous reporting system and a crime solver's tip line. These do not automatically go to law enforcement. Only life safety issues go to law enforcement. School systems handle the investigation and the disposition of everything, and then they close it out in the system. The Safe to Learn Act of 2018 required local education agencies to appoint a school safety coordinator. That individual for your jurisdiction is here now, Mr. Titus. I work very well with him. Even was just two of us in a truck and a half running the state. Larry was right up in front of things. You also have an appointed mental health services coordinator. It required the development of multidisciplinary behavioral health assessment teams, develop a plan to implement SRO guidelines, which we did, report SRO or adequate law enforcement coverage. This happens every year. We have to receive a report from the local education agency on how many SROs they have, where they're located. If they don't have an SRO in a facility, what is the adequate coverage plan for that facility? Now that can be everything from adopt a cop, the school can adopt an officer in their patrol area, they come in for lunch, things like that. It could be check on patrol from local law enforcement, they stop in, just say hi, is everything okay? Maybe do a quick walkthrough and walk out, however they want to do it with the school administrators, that kind of thing. Conduct regular school safety evaluations. We just codified that in COMAR. That is now every other year we have to have an evaluation from the local school systems that have to be reported to us. And report on critical life-threatening incidents. That is also codified in COMAR. It designates what is a critical life-threatening incident, where it is, and how it's supposed to be reported to us. The adequate coverage, again, this is part of COMAR. In the education article 1508, schools in Maryland have to have a school resource officer or an adequate local enforcement coverage. The model curriculum. This is the program we teach SROs and school security employees. The difference is Maryland is the first, if not the only state, that has legally defined an SRO, which is a law enforcement officer assigned to a school. We give them training on official interactions with students, the SRO and school and security employee as informal counselors. Believe it or not, kids come to both of those folks. Some systems have school security employees that are civilian security. They develop relationships with these kids along with the SRO. De-escalation. We were doing this before it became law in Maryland with our SROs. Disability and diversity awareness. Maintaining a positive school and climate. Constructive interactions with students. Basically what I'm showing you is we're teaching cops how not to be cops in a school. Implicit bias training, trauma-informed interventions, law-related education, the school and school law, what things you deal with schools alone specifically. The SRO as a teacher and mentor, or the SSE. There have been some jurisdictions where they have asked the school security employee, who's most likely retired from another public safety job, to assist doing like a health class or something like that, I don't know if they're an EMT or not, and a school resource officer have been known to teach classes. Enforcement and investigations in schools, and emergency planning and preparedness. Round that out, we give them multicultural and generational differences, pathways to violence, restorative practices in schools, human trafficking school related, that is out there. Normal adolescent behaviors, victimization of youth in schools, dangers of devices, that includes everything from cell phones, social media, to vaping and that kind of thing, and school threat assessment teams. The items you see in italics are done by subject matter experts we bring in. It is not done by our in-house staff. Most of our staff, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us are prior law enforcement, retired from law enforcement. We have a social worker as part of one of our regionals, and everybody else has done different things in our office. So knowing the clientele we're dealing with and what we have to provide, we don't know everything in law enforcement. So the items that you see in italics are items that we bring in subject matter experts that have graciously donated their time to work with us. We give 7 of these classes a year. Right now, there's 70 hours. It's being changed right now because every 3 years we have to recertify through the Maryland Police Corrections Training Commission. Now it's going to be condensed to 2 weeks. So they'll get the first week is the first day they sign on with us online with them, and they'll be doing, I think it's 6 videos, pre-course videos they have to do, and then we roll right into a Zoom class the rest of that week, and then the following week is live in person. And the last one I have here is understanding intellectual and developmental disabilities. So a lot of what I've heard today is we're giving touch points in law enforcement for SROs, so everybody understands that. What does this mean for local education and local law enforcement? They can work more collaboratively within the school to create a safer and secure learning environment, and they know they can work with, they'll know their boundaries they're required to work in. Every school system has an MOU with their local law enforcement when it comes to the SROs. Collaboration between the SRO and local community police. Again, that comes into the adequate coverage, adopting schools without SRO coverage, meet and greets with students and faculty, checking in with school administrators, whether in the patrol checks, before, during, and after the school. Model behavioral threat assessment teams. Again, COMAR requires this, mandates the assessment teams within the local school system include individuals with expertise in student counseling, education instruction, school administration, and law enforcement. Now that last one kind of brings a little consternation to some folks, I understand that. But when you're doing a behavioral threat assessment, it's not to see how you're going to lock somebody up. It's going to see what intervention strategies need to be put in place and the level. And you need all your information to do that, including from law enforcement. And the legislators decided that that was a requirement, and as they put that in there. A lot of school systems have been doing BTAs for years, and that wasn't a component. Law enforcement wasn't a component. Unfortunately, for some folks, it is now. Fortunately, it gives everybody a point of view. And required us, the center, to develop a model behavioral threat assessment policy. That has been done, and that's available on our website. And my contact information. Yes, Dino is my middle name. It does not have to be in parentheses, italics, or anything else, because my old boss, love him to death, but for some reason he used to put quotation marks around my middle name, and that was it. Everybody started doing it. My email, my office number, or my cell phone number, and our website. Questions on myself? Appreciate the time. I know it's quick, down and dirty, but to give you.
No, you got questions. You just.
I just got one question. On the 40 tabletop exercises
Yes,
that
mini.
schools can use, the mini exercises?
Yes, right on our website.
You know, I think emergencies like fire, natural disaster stuff like that. Is there other incidents in there, like breaking up a fight in a common space, or
I gotta look
the
to see if that
behavioral
one's
threat
in there.
assessment? Those types of activities in schools beyond.
These are mainly emergencies out of everybody's emergency operations plans.
Okay.
I downloaded a few that I really liked, that were not what you think of as typical emergencies. One was rumors everywhere. It was about the talking and everything that happens before there's a fight about to go down.
Yes.
And how you respond to that. There was another one. There were a couple that were like that, because so much of it is not just what happened, but predicted, like what's going to happen in the future and when things get amped up and when there's things that aren't getting addressed. So I liked that, because I thought that was something teachers could get in front of and have these tabletop exercises.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I mean, I grew up in Southern California, so we climbed under desks for earthquake drills, but how many times did we use it? But the practical ones that may be used any day, I think are important. That's what I was trying to get at. Thanks.
I have a quick question on the training and curriculum. It's a big list, and a big list for covering in 2 weeks. What kind of training happens after that? So is there ongoing training that happens? I took a crisis training course that was 4 days long.
We
and you've got
literally
a
2
huge
weeks
list.
ago just
Okay.
rolled out in-service training for 1,300 individuals across the state. So everybody who we've certified already, who are still either working as a civilian in the school security or as a school resource officer, they're now going through that video training for in-service training.
And is that at a regular interval that they'll get additional training?
They'll get it once a year.
Once a year.
It's offered
Okay.
once a year.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Can you say who participated from Calvert County Public Schools?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
For that training, who participated from Calvert County?
I have to look, because what we're doing now is it's being blasted to everybody, SROs and SSE personnel, and they've been given the registration information, and it's slowly, we've had handfuls from each jurisdiction start taking it now.
Is it mandatory?
Well, they have to maintain certain hours to maintain their certification from us, yes.
Can I just chime in on that same question? It might be Mr. Titus be more appropriate for the answer, but obviously our SROs are included, but do our safety advocates have the same training?
Correct. All the safety advocates have to go through the mandatory training. The most recent is the ones that were hired last year, through the 40, 60-hour training.
Yeah.
And part of it is done, as he said, virtual. The other part, we paid for them to go to do the in-person. Yes.
Thank you.
As well as it's a part of our in-service at the beginning of the year, which I had to be a part of as well.
Thank you.
In phase 4 of our Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee groups, we're gonna be defining measurable and short-term strategies. One of the things that we talked about last month was possibly creating a strategy where we create a Smokey the Bear kind of thing. And so have you partnered with other school systems and communities, which is really, really critical. It's going back to what our chair said about bringing in the families and involving them and creating some type of engagement where they buy into this safety and wellness, whether it is fighting, whether it's just being safe in the schools. Have you partnered with other committees to create some type of brand for that? Or
We
have
have
any MOUs with them?
We've not done branding. We advise on what would be in an MOU between the law enforcement and local education agencies. One of the things we really push in there is the SRO is not involved in school discipline.
Okay.
When I first came to the center in 2015, first project I had to work on was Baltimore City Schools. They recognized they had an issue themselves and they asked us to assist. And one of the things they did, started with the previous chief there at the time, he basically realized that, because they're a different breed, Baltimore City Schools has their own police department. Whereas everybody else outside, the other 20 jurisdictions, have partnerships with local law enforcement. They realized that at some point in time, there was an abdication of their discipline role it was given to law enforcement. You know, like a kid wearing a hat in school is not a law enforcement issue. So he quashed it right then and there. And one of our projects was to help assist them with creating their new policy and everything else like that.
But we created some messaging. Would you be able to help?
Well, you gotta understand, there's 24 school systems and there's
Okay.
24 different messages. We give a generic,
Okay.
we'll help with generic. So if Larry needs some assistance with anything, he calls me, we'll bounce back and forth with what we can do, and then, you know, I'll say, then you gotta put your flavor on it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 24, it's like Baskin Robbins in Maryland, there's 24 flavors.
Yeah, and context is everything, and so
Yes.
we appreciate that. Yes, go right
May I
ahead.
have a question?
Yes.
So do you also teach the well-screened strategies? Is that part of what you teach your SROs? I'm gonna say that the answer is no by what you just did.
No. I have to look at what our
You may
subject matter
take that.
is. Okay.
And
Make sure I get your name so I can return it when I'm done reading it.
you don't need to return it. You have no idea how many have I. Just pull that out
Okay.
at home. But please, research it.
Okay.
Backtothebalance.org. There, I saw something earlier about the pipeline to prison.
Yeah.
There's a documentary, Pipeline to Prison, will make you cry.
Yeah.
It's real.
Oh, I know. And one of the things I tell people is, I wish I had had some of this training. I retired from Montgomery County Police. 21 years there, 4 years fire and rescue prior. I wish I had had some of this training back in the 80s, 90s when I worked there, because I would have probably handled some kids differently. I know I would have.
But even I didn't get that until my kid was 6. If I'd have had it at 3, would have lived a different life.
Let me,
I'm honest, but that
Yeah.
is something that I just, I'll review my information with our.
Okay.
Okay.
Spending more time on this, but,
Yeah, I'm sure that you guys can carry on a conversation, but I have a couple more questions.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have any questions? It was clear to me from reviewing your slide deck prior to the meeting that the relationship is primarily through the likes and representations of the leadership, such as Mr. Titus, and throughout the state. They're your main folks, and then that's your access in the system and the rest.
They're our key to the door, yes.
Right, and so in all of that, the thing that came to mind was just as this whole movement, your organization, the rest has evolved over the years, who informs the governing bodies? Who deals with informing the administrative teams? Mr. Titus is an effective leader who's been with the school system for a long time, but he works for some folks.
Mhm.
How are they informed about school safety? What is the training for school board members? What is the training for superintendents on this matter? Now, I realize that we expect them to be experts in every field of human endeavor, but in
Well,
light
we know
of
they're
that, what kind of information is provided to them?
At least twice a year, every superintendent receives a letter from our executive director, from our office, on the beginning of the year, the last year's metrics that their school systems had, and where they've met everything that's required under the law, and then the upcoming focus we have training-wise for the year, and what we're allowed, we offer training outside of SROs, SSEs, like the behavioral threat assessment training. So we offer that to them also, so they know where their system's been the following year, the previous year, where the center is going, and what's available from the center to each local education agency. So every superintendent gets that letter, and at the end of the year, they'll get the follow-up letter for where they've been this year. So basically, the first of the year letters are kind of twofold. It's a synopsis of last year, which they've already received toward the end of the year, and then the goals, and
Gotcha.
and we're going the following year. So the superintendents through PZAM do get that.
Okay, that I can gather. How are the people who govern schools informed?
Unless we're asked to present at a school board meeting,
So when the State Association of School Boards meets, there isn't a particular training session or anything on school safety?
not per se. If we're asked to present, make a presentation at a meeting, whether it be state board or local board, we're more than happy to do that.
I think that one of the things that, I think about us being brought here by the folks who run the county. And certainly we're having conversations about the schools and life in the schools and well-being of students in the schools, but there's also a layer of leadership that's engaged called the school board. And I was just wondering what the relationship was and the interaction. So,
Well, we try not to force ourselves on anybody.
I understand. No, I understand.
There's enough mandates
I understand
that
your,
people
I
feel we're being
understand your
forceful.
role. I understand your role, and I respect that. It just dawned on me
Yeah.
that this is one of those things that needs to be higher on all of our agendas, so.
And I'll take it back on our end, and we'll start working on maybe a generic presentation we can give to every school board also, so they have knowledge.
Okay. Well, that was a thought that came to mind when I was reviewing your material. Any other questions or comments? Well, Dino, you are certainly an asset, and we value having you as a committee member and are really appreciative of your work. Thank you for your presentation.
Two quick things.
Sure.
We have our summer conference coming in July. That's for school leadership, counselors, safety employees, and SROs. And we are governed by a 6-person cabinet level group from the state, our sub-cabinet. We have a school safety advisory board. My man here is also part of that too. He's represented from down here, who we meet with, it's quarterly, I believe now, yeah.
Okay.
And that meeting actually is coming up, this September 2nd. So,
That board is made up of, you know, superintendents, board of ed, directors, special education, parent members. So it is, the information does fill.
and again, that information is also on our website too, if you want to see who's on there.
Okay.
Hit the website.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. We have reached the point that we are dealing with our number 6, which is our future meetings. That was raised, and the question about the public comments that some of you have received about the time of the meeting. So, please, anyone who would like to share.
Yes, sir. So there's some comments online, social media about the timing, 2 in the afternoon, people are working. Students are in school, so I had some suggestions of moving it to 6 o'clock, but I also saw a great suggestion, if we can't move it there for every meeting, at least having a quarterly meeting that is at 6 p.m. to allow more participation for the community at the meeting. So those are a couple suggestions. Just moving it into the evening generally, or at least having one meeting after work during the quarter. Those are comments I saw online.
Okay. Anyone else? I think part of this issue, we will send out just a quick poll in terms of your availability, because we can't make any assumptions about your availability, the 15 members who are appointed to the committee. So with that in mind, we'll do a doodle poll or something like that allows us to understand what your availability is like. I also recognize the fact that while evenings will be better for those who work, evenings are also times, particularly those who have children who are engaged with homework, dinner, and a whole bunch of other things as well. So we realize that there's no great time. So we will start by dealing with that. I like the idea of at least once a quarter or some point, but we'll take those things in consideration.
We'll send out a poll by the end of the week to committee members to think about where we're moving in terms of time. And I will say as well, for at least the third Wednesday pattern that we have established right now, if the committee were to move to night meetings, we would have to move to another date because the Planning Commission has a standing meeting on the third Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. So that would be a consideration as well.
Or another location.
Yes, or another location.
Yeah, or another location. So I think that we could take that in consideration as well. Anyone else with any comments regarding that, the future meeting dates? Public comment.
Mr. Chair?
I want to remind you.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I want to remind you that we have 2 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes for organizations. And we are going to start with those who are in our chat or who have sent us something online.
If there are any folks online who wish to leave public comment, please use the raise your hand function and we will identify you by your screen name. Mr. Murdoch, if you may unmute, you have 2 minutes to leave public comment. Also, I do want to note prior to your public comment, sir, if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, you have 5 minutes to leave public comment. And if you're speaking on behalf of yourself, you have 2 minutes. So please identify yourself at the beginning of your public comment. And with that, Mr. Murdoch, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. I actually work for a nonprofit, Peace Through Action USA, and we have a small pilot program here, the Calvert Peace Project. So when this committee was formed, I'm very curious to see how this seems to be working. I'm impressed so far, so kudos for that. I was afraid that this was going to be some kind of just a whitewash, and I apologize for being blunt, but that's kind of an expectation, unfortunately. And I apologize, I joined late. it sounds like the committee reports just back to the commissioners. Is there going to be any kind of cross sharing this information with the Board of Ed or the Calvert County School District in general? If not, I think that potentially loses some value. And then two things that I heard, and I was hoping I know technically you guys don't usually answer questions, so I am going to send these also in an email follow-up. The presenter mentioned that the school resource officers are mandated. It sounds like we have a few schools that are currently lacking a school resource officer. If it's mandated and it's not being followed, really, what are the repercussions of that?
Is that the end of your questioning?
No. The second is also, I heard about the counselors, that there seems to be many counseling positions that are open. I'm wondering, are there currently any job postings out there, by the county? I mean, we're well into the school year. Is that something we're having just a hard time finding qualified candidates, or it's a budgeting thing, or do we not know what we don't know?
Yeah. May I
yeah.
please, can I respond to those two questions, please? Both of those questions are better answered by people who are with the school system. I think that if there's a member who can answer that, Mr. Titus, I would assume that you would know the status of your staffing.
We are required to have, under the Maryland Safe to School Act, that we are required to have coverage, SRO coverage. At the current time, we have all of our secondary schools fully staffed with full-time persons, and our elementary schools share for the coverage. We have 3 officers that handle the elementary schools, as well as the middle school and high schools will cover their feeder schools.
So you have.
So you said shared versus coverage. I bet your intent is to always have someone in each school, not shared, correct?
We're working toward that, yes.
Is that the
Okay.
current plan?
Yes.
That is the current plan. That's currently what we have right now. That's what is reported to the Maryland Center for School Safety.
So right now, you're operating at 100 capacity of your plan?
Correct.
Okay, then, because the issue is whether or not we're in compliance with what we said we were going to do, and the answer is yes to that. As it pertains to the counseling, unless we have someone from personnel, I don't think that we are in a position to answer that. We'll get back to you on that.
I just actually pulled it up on the website, and they're
I
advertised,
was
5
gonna
of
say,
them.
all you have to do is look on the website.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in
Yeah.
with the same thing. I certainly know about my counselor positions, and I won't put anybody's personal business, but I will say I can tell you for sure that I have one building that should have 2 counselors, where one counselor is doing double duty. That position is posted. CCPS is actively pursuing, but multiple unfilled positions across related service providers. So counselors,
Yeah.
psychologists, absolutely.
Social workers.
And that seems to be a theme in Calvert County, being able to, anybody to get good mental health stuff. My last
I think it's a
comment-
theme across the
board.
country.
Country.
I wish Calvert County had that uniqueness, because that would mean that our neighbors are in a much better place, and we all want to love our neighbors, but
Yes.
uniformly in the midst of this, it seems that the profession is challenged across the state
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of
and
people
country
in
with this.
COVID retired from that profession, and now we're way understaffed. My last comment is to the fellow who brought up earlier about the, more and more is getting stacked on teachers. You could not pay me to become a teacher or a cop in this current environment.
Okay.
I'm going to be blunt again.
Mr. Murdoch.
I really hope that some of the feedback given by this committee is towards the parents. These behaviors that these kids are displaying are learned. They are learning them most likely through their peers at their home.
Mr. Murdoch, can
Thank
you
you.
wrap up, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Murdoch, and we certainly heard you, and we will try to get the information. Well, you can go to the website for the other appointments, but we're pleased to learned that all of our plan is being followed with regard to safety officers. So, thank you for your feedback. Next.
Please raise your hand if you're joining us virtually and wish to give public comment. Again, those joining us virtually, if you wish to give public comment, please raise your hand now, or else we'll move on to those who are in the room. Okay, Mr. Chair, I believe that wraps up on public comment virtually. For those who are joining us in the room, if you could please line up at the microphone to give public comment. Again, please identify yourself at the beginning of your public comment, whether you're speaking as an individual or on behalf of a group, and depending on that, you will have 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
My name is Shelley Baden. Just real quick, I'm just going to throw out a bunch of bullet points. Just really wanted to come and see what this was all about today. I am a parent of an explosive child who was born traumatized. He was born drug addicted, and you can be traumatized intrauterine. Lots of studies, medical evidence to show that this is exactly what happens. So, in addition to all this, I am the vice chair for CCAC, and I am a huge advocate for Ross Green strategies, for what you guys talked about, which I have my book sitting here, livesofthebalance.org. I would highly recommend everybody in this room, everybody who's listening, to go on the site, explore this site. The other thing I'm going to tell you is behaviors communication. There is a huge deficit of speech pathologists in our nation. It is not special to Calvert County. Behaviors communication. If these children are not getting the speech pathologist who is helping them not just speak the word clearly, but to express their words. There are so many children that cannot express their words. This turns into behavior issues. If you have a child that's having a problem who cannot express his or her thoughts, it turns into behaviors. Behavior is communication. Yes, we do have mental health issues. We also have to understand behaviors come from so many different things. So many different things that I never hear anybody talk about. There are children that don't have food. There are children who during COVID, they didn't have electricity. These things create behavior, anxiety in these children. It's not that a child wakes up in the morning and says, well, I'm gonna throw my stuff across the room. I'm gonna pick up a chair. It doesn't happen that way. It does not. Everybody in here is about safety. So let's be realistic and open your eyes and look at this differently than what it's looked at over the last 100 years. Please. Behaviors communication. What is the student communicating? Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members, Chair Jones. My name is Joseph Cormier, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself today. Behaviors communication, 100%. A child that's hungry is hangry, just like we're hangry as adults. When their shoes are too tight, when they can't see the blackboard or the smart board because their prescription's 3 years old, when their clothes aren't clean, when they go home and they have empty cupboards and parents who are violent, that's what they bring back to us. And what happens when the bus stop stops coming? They're now part of our community. So we need to invest in the early interventions and the middle schools and the high schools to get these kids ready to be productive community members. We do a great job with HIPPY, home instruction for parents of preschool years, where they go in the home and they provide instruction for parents. Once those kids hit elementary and secondary, there's no more of that. And we really need to work on the parents who want that information. We want to be able to get it to them. We want to go into the home and give them the strategies to work with their kids so that when they come to school, they're ready to produce the behaviors, the compliance that we need to get from point A to point B for 180 days. Please stay student focused. When we talk about kids, let's remember we're talking about kids, not the special ed kids, not the bad kids, not the violent kids. They're kids first. So please keep your language kid focused. And we can talk about staff and educators all day long. Support staff lead the way. From the bus drivers and the bus aides to the front office staff to the cafeteria staff, building service workers. Without them, the teacher's day doesn't work. So please include support staff in your thoughts and your motions going forward. And it's going to take money. full stop. We're not funded anywhere near enough in special education. Our 504 teams are overloaded. Our speech pathologists have 50 kids on their caseload, and the documentation requirements keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And there's not enough hours in the day to do the thing. So we can sit here and talk about safety all day long, but unless we put more hours in the day, more boots on the ground, the schools aren't going to get any better. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Dodds. I'm a nurse at Calvert County Health Department. I coordinate the Tobacco Use Prevention and Cessation Program. I am not going to go over everything I had brought with me. It'd take too long. So what I'm going to tell you is that I'm going to email Emily information on different resources coming up that will, for trainings for marijuana and vaping. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I think I'm the last one. My name is Susan Cox. Many of you may know me in the county. I may have had you in my classroom. I am in currently my 52nd year of teaching. I'm a 30-year veteran of Calvert County Public Schools. And I went on to have a delightful career beyond public school. I went to private, and I currently have a business going of my own with agriculture education. The first students I have are now seeking Medicare. Perspective. Thank you. Thank you. I so wanted to be on this committee, but I see why I'm not. I can be more of an advocate for you and help you do your job. I see the understanding of why this committee is so important. I see this committee infiltrating every part of our government, every part of our education, because we are talking about human beings. We are responsible for the development and the love and all the things that go into helping a human being develop properly. So I applaud you. I'm also an advocate for you. So seek me, talk to me. Next meeting, I'll bring some business cards so we can start this conversation. I've even considered having you come to my farm so that we can do some problem solving and maybe even some training. I believe that schools are a microcosm of society. And the most important piece, the children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Hill. I wanted just to point out two things. The first one was that the average time if a student is arrested in CCPS is at least 10 days with a board hearing before they're allowed to return to school. The second is and I'm going to ask Mr. Titus to verify what I'm saying, in that there was a training that came out last weekend, the 2024 Calvert County Public Schools Suicide Intervention and Prevention Training and Trauma-Informed Schools. This is a form that all of you should have been given and been aware of, but it was just released. I understand that. I do want to point out that there are a couple bullet points on that, in that our suicide rate here for our children, our minors, is the highest in the state. And we need to be terribly concerned about that. That is both male and female, Caucasian and African American. That is across the board. This is not just one way. And I hope that you will take a good look at that right away and deal with that. But thank you. Those are just.
When you said that, is that a per capita rate?
Sorry?
The suicidal rate, is it a per capita rate?
On this list, it does not say, it just says straight across the state, it was the highest in the state.
Okay.
We have more suicide attempts here.
I think we wanna,
As a percentage of population.
yeah. Look, and I can understand it if it's per capita. If it were other than per capita, that I should be reading things differently.
I will say that it has nothing to do necessarily just with post-COVID, because in 2015 it was astronomically high as well.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Erin Farley. I actually work at Calvert Health. I've been a nurse for over 25 years, 20 plus years emergency medicine, 3 years of correction. I have 6 kids, products of Calvert County Public Schools. Sorry, it's the shortness, Emily. I'm not here representing Calvert County Public Schools. I'm here representing my children. So I just had a couple points, and I am going to try to come to some of the other meetings. For your data points that you're looking at, remember we have our own data on Healthy Calvert's website that we pay a lot of money for that data to be right there about what's going on in our community. You also have Trevor Project in Maryland that is your leader for your suicide LGBTQ plus community. We should really be looking at some of that information. I also wanted to remind you on one of your things when you're talking about the school safety portion of it, you don't have anything in there addressing the real safety in the bathrooms, in the locker rooms. We know there's been issues and problems, not just with smoking and vaping. I do lead a team who goes into the schools and teach marijuana while we care and Tobacco Roadshow. I do all the community outreach, the health classes and things in the school. I did have an opportunity to spend 6 months in Calvert County with the group at Calvert County Public Schools with Dr. Polsky, Dr. Folsom, many wonderful leaders, reviewing the health curriculum from pre-K to 12th grade. Recently was a really great opportunity for us to bring people together, and I know they're continuing that with Dr. Johnson, really great program. One of the things we do need to be thinking about and came out in that is it's great we give all this in-service and education to our teachers, but I know like how many modules I have to do every year that's mandated. It's not the same as having true meaningful education for them as well. And considering that we're asking people who go to college to teach PE, to teach our health classes, we do have to think about that. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay. Let me then just say again that we welcome and we are thankful that Leslie will be joining us as a vice chair. We have a smaller version of the mission statement that we will move forward with next time around. Your timelines are out. Not timelines, but your the framework that we put out in terms of guiding framework is available for you to look at. It will be acted on at the next meeting. We will also have the survey out so that you can give your feedback in terms of your priorities for dates and times, given some public comments that we've received. And of course, Dino has made himself available to respond to any questions that you might have regarding his presentation. Anything that we need to, any issue of recapping in terms of the meeting that we need to be concerned with? Yes.
I would like to make a clarification. All 24 local education agencies comply with the requirement for either an SRO or an adequate coverage plan. There are only 2 jurisdictions in the state out of 24 that have 100% coverage, but they're also very small school systems. And the biggest impediment to having total SRO coverage is that ability, and these gentlemen can testify, hiring law enforcement. The people are not there to do it now like it used to be. But every jurisdiction, including Calvert, has an adequate coverage plan if they don't have a SRO in the facility.
Okay. Any other points for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair, just as a point of order going forward, and this is a suggestion maybe for you and Leslie and maybe Emily to have a discussion. We had some really great public comment and feedback, which I do appreciate. It may be worth your consideration as to having a policy on whether or not you'll respond during the meeting, after the meeting, or not at all, and make sure that that's clear, because there was some back and forth, which was certainly fine, but just want to make sure that's clear going forward.
So Chair,
Thank you.
we will provide a FAQ page, the responses to the questions given today.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Anything else? That being said, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we would need a vote on that motion. I apologize.
Excuse me?
We need a
A
vote.
motion to
formal-
adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Properly moved in second. Any need discussion? The meeting is adjourned.